Stop salting your steaks. That is the shocking secret to the best crust you will ever get. Why? Because the salt makes the surface of the steak watery, and water is the biggest enemy of crust. Simple as that.
And that's why I don't salt the steaks before cooking anymore. Look here.
This is the crust of a salted steak. Looks barely browned, boring, and minimally developed. In contrast, this, ladies and gents, is the crust of an unsalted steak. Properly browned, well-developed crust that puts to shame the crust on the salted steak any day. And I can always add salts after cooking the steak. Yes, salts as in many kinds. Truffle salt, flaky salt.
Did I get your attention now? Good. So, what the hell happened to that poor steak? Did I upset the steak gods?
Nope, it's the WAP steak. Wet as pre-salted steak? In fact, let's see salt versus no salt steaks in action. Warning, many steaks were devoured in the making of this video. Alright, the meat I'm playing with today is a beautiful ribeye. Nice cap, good marbling. Unlike the fish that I get from my bathtub, I got these steaks from Costco, the land of the free sample and the home of the steak. So I'll cut this piece in two. One half I leave as is, no salt on it, nothing, no seasoning. I will add salt to the other piece though. Top, bottom, sides, I'll make it rain salt everywhere. Now, let's see, salt versus no salt. Cooking them in the same pan, same temperature, same downness, same cooking time. Basically, all parameters are the same, the only difference is the salt. Steaks in. I'm cooking them using my 20 seconds flip, very scientific method. First flip coming in, and wow, do you guys see the difference? The salted one is gray AF, while the other one is starting to look brown and to form the crust. And that is only after 20 seconds of cooking. As I go on cooking them, you can see how the crust develops in real time. From one flip to another, the unsalted steak looks better and more crust is forming and looks sexier, while the other one looks average, pretty decent. But there is no doubt now, the unsalted steak develops the crust way faster, sooner and better than the steak with salt on it. I mean, look at them. These crusts are like Elvis during his coke years versus the Virgin Mary, and I think I know which one I want to party with. Plus, I can add all these fancy salts to the Elvis steak after cooking it. Truffle salt or maybe some flaky salt from the fancy royal region of Malden, England.
Oh, darling, this flaky salt is so much better than peasant salts, said the Queen while wasting British people tax money on salt.
What I'm trying to say is enjoy heterogeneity. No two bites should taste the same. Now, what's this crust anyway? And why do we care about it so much? Well, it's a thin layer at the surface of the meat that's exposed to blazing high heat. As cooking continues, the browning is more pronounced and the smell is to die for.
And that's why us humans love this stuff. Put me in front of a boiled steak and a well-browned one. I'll pick the one on the right every flipping time, like a steak junkie. And so will you.
That's just because of how we're wired. Brown steak is way tastier, any brown food for that matter. So how do we get that nice crust?
By the courtesy of Maillard reaction. That's how. My yard, your yard, anybody's yard.
Let me introduce you to the most delicious science known to mankind. This browning reaction takes place at around 300 Fahrenheit. You know what that means, right? It means the water on the steak has to evaporate first at 212 Fahrenheit. Only afterwards, at the second step, the steak temperature will increase to 300. No browning will happen until we evaporate the water. No browning, no taste, less water means more browning means more delicious meat in my mouth.
Okay, haha, you like tasty meat in your mouth, but what does salt have to do with all this?
Well, you see, when salt is added, a pool of water forms on top of the steak. Look, this is how much water is on top 10 minutes after salting the meat.
Yup, isn't that amazing? What are you waiting for?
Go, cook it. Apply high heat for a very long time. No crust, oh my god, no crust. Cook it some more to evaporate the water. Browning reaction is finally happening and damn it, by that point the steak overcooked beyond medium rare. Congrats!
And your dad is still not proud of your overcooked gray steaks. But that's where I come to the rescue. Do you have 5 minutes to talk about science? Don't run from science!
Fellas, let's take a look at what happens to your meat when you add salt to it. So, big piece of steak. I'll add salt on all sides. And voila! Let's see what happens next. Here's a very cool time-lapse footage that shows what's going on. Do you see? Magic! The salt disappears. Or in scientific terms, as the salt sits on top of the steak, it draws out the water from the inside of the meat. During osmosis, salt will get the water, dissolving and forming a salty liquid that sits on top of the steak. See this wet finger or this wet paper towel? That's water. But if I give it enough time though, the steak will get back all that salty liquid. It will reabsorb the water because of the weakened protein structure. See, the water was reabsorbed, my paper towel is finally dry. Drier than English humor, I'd say. All this salt steak friendly fighting happens over the next 3 to 4 hours. Now, for me, the ideal salting situation is like this. Salt on steak, steak on wire rack. Put that in the fridge for 12 to 24 hours. That process is called dry brining.
This steak is worth the wait, unlike that girl you waited for 2 years in high school.
But if you're in a rush, here's the fun experiment I did. This experiment will tell you the right time to cook your steak after salting it. Should you cook it 2 minutes, 10 minutes or half an hour after salting? Who knows? Well, I know. I measured how much water quantity is on top of a steak over the next 2 hours. So, the obvious way was to get some steak, a lot of it actually. Cut it into same size cubes that have same surface area. That's just because I don't want to have a biased experiment. Then I added on all of the pieces the same quantity of salt, around 1.2 grams, measured with my fancy lab scale. Then I measured how much water sits on top of each piece at different time intervals. I'm crazy, I know, right? A paper towel was used to absorb the moisture, as you can see here. Then that was weighed with my fancy scale. The results? Drumroll please for the Einstein of steaks. So here are the results. In the first few minutes, nothing impressive happened. So you're still Gucci to cook your steak at this stage. But look how the water quantity increases after 10-20 minutes, up until 1 hour and 15 minutes after salting. Then the water starts to decrease as it is reabsorbed into the meat. The moral of this, if you add salt, cook the steaks either 5 minutes or 1.5 hours after putting salt on it, just to avoid that stupid watery window time. You've been warned.
And if you decide not to salt your steak, remember you have a ton of seasoning options afterwards.
Some of the candidates at the seasoning Oscars, just to mention a few: truffle salt, pungent and garlicky; hot sauce from the island of Puerto Rico, also known as the island of Shiitake powder that hits umami taste buds like no other, and how can we forget about the fancy royal Flakey Salt. Guys, we have reached the end of another masterpiece. If you're not subscribed, boy, what are you doing? Thank you so much for watching, catch you on the next one, dropping the mic.